Hello, this is Brother Fowler with the first of 3 brief training videos on how to administer the end of semester assessment. This video focuses on the paper-only or traditional assessment. You'll see here on your screen that in order to download the assessment so you can print it off for your students, you'll need to go to the seminary website at seminary.lds.org. And you'll need to make sure you log in with your LDS user account, name, and password. So let's practice that. Go to a web browser, type in seminary.lds.org. Right now you'll see that I am not actually logged in. It's looking for it's giving me the option over here to log in with my LDS account, username, and password, but I want to show you what happens if I don't log in. So like before, I'm going to click on the manuals link. If you saw our earlier overview video, I'll scroll down to the book of scripture that I'm teaching and click on learning assessments. As I scroll down on the next page, you'll see that the study guides exist, but there are no learning assessments. And this is because I'm not logged in. These learning assessments are the assessments are only available for seminary teachers. So I will need to click up here under my account and ward and click the sign in button. And this is where I'll type in my LDS account username and password. Once I have entered in that information, I can see in the upper right hand corner that I've logged in. And if I scroll down towards the bottom, there they are. Here are the learning assessments for every book of scripture. I'm interested right now in downloading 1 Nephi chapter 1 through Alma 16, the first semester assessment for the Book of Mormon year. I can click on it and it should open up a PDF file. You'll notice towards the top that there are 17 pages in this PDF file, and this entire packet contains not only the correct response guides for sections 1 and 2 of the assessment, or what they call the teacher packet, but also everything you need for your students, the student learning assessment packet, which includes an answer sheet for every student, a question section on multiple choice, another question section on explained doctrine, and then the belief and apply surveys. I printed out one of these assessments so you could see how it prints out if you decide to print it double-sided, and that's kind of what I did in order to save paper. And the way they've organized it now, it prints out very nicely, double-sided, almost completely. There's only one section you're going to want to do differently, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So, what do you need for your students? Well, you need really just one correct response guide for the section 1 multiple choice. And let me show you what that looks like. You'll see here that I have the wrong paper in front of me. I apologize. This is the first page or first 2 pages of your assessment packet. It's just a cover sheet with a content section. You don't need to necessarily print that out, but in the PDF, even though page number here is I and II, on the PDF file, this is going to be pages 1 and 2. So you don't need to print that out necessarily. The next section is which is pages, here it's listed as 1 through 4, but it's really 3 through 6 because those are the pages in the PDF file. So you'll want to print out just one of these correct response guides. You use it as a teacher to review this with your students on the second day after they have taken the assessment. So you just need one of these. And again, if you just print it out double-sided, it's just two pieces of paper, front and back. The next section that you'll want to print out for each of your students is the correct response guide for section 2, or the explained doctrine section. Here it's listed as pages 5 and 6, but for your intents and purposes, it's going to be pages 7 and 8. And you'll notice if you look at your screen, you'll notice that I have a number sign S times the correct response guide for section 2, explained doctrine. That's just the number of students. If you have 10 students in your class, then print out 10 of these correct response guides for section 2. And the reason why I want to have one for every student, or at least have them for most of your students, is when your students finish their assessment, because they'll finish it at different times. Some students will go through it very quickly and they'll be done. Others, it takes them a little bit longer. When they're done, you're going to hand them this sheet, and you're going to say, go back to your desk, and on the last 4 questions of the assessment, the explain doctrine section, section 2, review this and grade yourself, because that's what they need to do to fill in the last 4 bubbles on their answer sheet here. They'll need to actually fill out whether or not they got the correct answer or not over here. So have these printed out for pretty much all of your students. That's what you'll need to do. Okay, you'll notice in the next part that you'll need to print out the learning assessment, which is the student learning assessment packet for all of your students. But you don't want to print out the whole thing. You want to print out pages 9 through 15 in the PDF file. That's the pages you want to print out. They're labeled, if you look at this, they're labeled 7 through, I think, 13. But it's the same. 7 through 13 on the paper, printed, but in the PDF file, it's going to be pages 9 through 15. And you'll notice that there's a cover sheet. On the flip side is the answer sheet. You'll invite students to put their name at the top. And don't worry about number correct. That'll happen the next day when you're doing the review. And then students will use these bubble answer sheet, I guess you can call it, to answer the multiple choice questions 1 through 28. And then down here is where they will check, they'll fill in at the end, after they've finished assessing themselves on the essay question, whether or not they answered it correctly. So that's part of the student packet. The rest of it, pages, I guess, 11 through 15, are the actual questionnaire that they'll use for their assessment. So you'll see that here are questions 1 through 8, 9 through 19, 20 through 28. That goes through. And then that's section 1. Section 2 is the explain doctrine section. And they'll actually write on these sheets. And they'll write their answers down. So once they have filled in their bubble sheets for questions 1 through 28, the multiple choice section, and once they've written out their 4 explain doctrine answers to these questions, then they'll come up to you, they'll ask for the correct response guide for section 2, the explain doctrine, which you'll see has 4 questions and the points that should have been included. And at that point, they'll take this back to their desk. They'll pull out their bubble sheet. They'll look at their last 2 pages of their assessment, and they'll compare what they wrote here with what's written in the correct answer guide. And once they figure out which of these they did correctly, they'll then go back to their bubble sheet and they'll mark these in. And when they finish that, now they're done. These have been marked. These have all been marked. Hasn't been graded yet. And it will be turned in to you as a teacher. And that would be day 1 of the assessment. Then when you come back, oh, I'm sorry, there's one other thing. There's one other part. I forgot about that. That is the belief and apply surveys. Now, this is an optional part of the assessment. It's not actually graded or anything like that. And you'll notice that there's not a name associated with it, which is great. But the goal of these is to figure out where your students are at in their faith, in their belief, and in how well they're living the gospel, according to a self-assessment. And the purpose of this really is to take these from your class and combine them with the other classes throughout the stake, and get an idea of where our youth are at, and to share this with the aggregate responses with you as seminary teachers, as well as with stake leaders. And this is something where we can do it on a class-by-class basis for your class, but we can also do it across the stake so you can see both. And this can help then drive what you do in the second semester to help deepen students' learning and application. So to show you real quickly what those look like, this is the belief and application survey. This is what you'll want to print out separately, pages 16 and 17, the last 2 pages. Just print out both sides and keep this separate from the student learning assessment packet. That's has all the questions and the answer sheet. Because we don't want to associate this with a particular student. We want to keep that data private and protected. And this is what they would also turn in to you after that first day. And then finally, on the second day is when you will pull out the correct response guide, the one copy that you printed out, and you will then review that with your students as they go through their answer sheet. And they will then, make notes on which ones they got incorrect. And they will count up the number they got correct and put the number up here. And then they'll convert that number into a percentage so you can know how well they did. And they'll turn these back into you, and you'll then be able to put them into the gradebook. Hopefully that helps you understand how to administer the paper-only assessment. It's pretty straightforward once you figure out how many you need of each part. And here's the slide once more. One correct response guide for section 1. You need the number of students you have times you need a correct response guide for section 2 times the number of students you have, essentially, or most of the students, since they won't all finish at the same time. Every student needs to have their own learning assessment packet, pages 9 through 15. So print out one for every one of your students. And then finally, print out a Section 3 Belief and Apply Survey section for each of your students as well. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, like and subscribe.